Hey guys, Richard here with Downgrid Survival. You know, I woke up dark 30 this morning. I couldn't sleep anymore, so I got up and it's raining outside, so Toby and I couldn't go for our morning walk, so we decided we'd just go for a ride. But I wanted to take a few minutes and share some thoughts about what's going on right now. And let me start with saying that this video is not monetized, okay? I'm not placing advertisements on it. I've got nothing to gain from this video. And if YouTube chooses to place advertisements at the beginning or end, that's beyond my control, okay? So I just want to put that out there. And also understand that I deliberately waited a couple of days after this tragedy before I spoke about it. One, out of respect for the families, and two, to make sure that, you know, we have some facts to talk about. There's a lot of folks on YouTube that jumped out right away, started putting out videos, you know, with the early reports of what was coming out of Texas, and they're out there talking about it. And if you know anything about chaos, okay, you don't always see the truth. You don't always hear the truth right away. You know, even what you think you know isn't always the case. And that's something you need to understand. So it's easy to jump to conclusions. I certainly did. You know, I had my own feelings. Initially, I just knew something wasn't right. I knew things probably went down a little differently than what it was being portrayed. I just could kind of feel it. And I started getting more and more angry after every fresh report that came out, and the details, you know, were changing. The facts were changing. And I found myself getting more and more angry about the whole situation. But I deliberately waited a few days because I wanted things to kind of pan out just a little bit. And I'm glad I did, because there's a lot of folks out there on YouTube that didn't do that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks out there that seem to be trying to capitalize on this tragedy, and that's by no means what I'm doing here. But there's some things that we need to learn from what has transpired. Let me also start out by saying that I am a thin blue line supporter. I support our men and women in law enforcement. I also recognize that our men and women in law enforcement are human, just like I am, and I make mistakes. And certainly I think grave mistakes were made during this tragedy, yet we don't know all the details and things are still unfolding. But I can't help but to be angered over what we know so far. There's something about this particular shooting that has really grabbed my soul. You know, it's getting to be more and more often that these types of tragedies are unfolding. And certainly we're probably starting to get a little numb to it because, you know, it's almost expected. But there's something about this one. One being that it involves children. Children in school, living their lives, happy, joyful, innocent. When they went to school that day, they had no idea what was going to unfold. And that's part of what's really gripping me. It's really got a hold of me, and I'm having a hard time just letting it go. And I guess we shouldn't let it go, right? Because if we allow ourselves to become numb and become passive on these type of situations, then we don't take the action necessary to try to make changes and try to be better. So by no means am I suggesting that we're passive or we let this go. This is something that we all need to hold dear to our hearts. Now, in regards to what actions were taken or not taken, it's easy to be an armchair quarterback, right? And talk about all the things that should have happened. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't that happen? And I'm not, before you start commenting below, I am in no means justifying anyone's actions. But, you know, I am reminded of a movie, and a lot of you may have seen this, and I want to refer to that for just a second. Did you ever see the movie Sully, Miracle on the Hudson, the movie about the airplane that went down in the Hudson River? And miraculously, everybody survived. In that movie, Captain Sully was portrayed as having made grave mistakes, okay? He could have made it back to the airport. He should have made it back to the airport. And there was beginning to be some outrage among the FAA and other investigators, just because he made the wrong decision, right? He made a bad decision, and he put everybody in harm's way. And as the movie goes on, they start showing pilots in simulators that successfully, under those exact conditions that the aircraft was in, was successfully able to land the airplane at a nearby airport. But then Captain Sully asked them, but how many times did you try that? And I don't recall exactly, but it seemed like it was 17 tries. Is it 17 times they had to practice before they got it right to land that airplane at an airport? Oh yeah, so certainly it could be done. But when you're in the cockpit, or whether you're on the ground facing an active shooter, you don't have an opportunity to replay that over and over and over again so you get it exactly right. You got to work with the information that is available to you at that moment in time, making split-second decisions, and then hope you get it right. All too often we see it in the news. Somebody got shot by a police officer, and there's all kinds of outrage because police brutality, or they made a bad decision and they should have they should have done this or they should have done that. And although it may be true, police officers make mistakes just like you and I. And yes, they go through rigorous training not to make those mistakes. But as a human, I also recognize that every situation is different. You can't train for exactly every situation. Look, I'm a veteran. I know what it's like to train and to be prepared and to plan out every possible scenario, looking for the best possible solution and outcome. But until you're in that situation, you don't know how you're going to act. And here we are, we're trying to make judgments based on news reports and facts that keep changing, and we weren't there. Now, having said that, I'm still angry about what has transpired. I'm angry that there was an active shooter and police waited 48 minutes to go and engage this shooter. That should not have happened. And yes, we're looking at hindsight saying things definitely should have been better. Are they cowardices? Quite possibly. Or does it come down to one commander's decision, and he made a decision based on a lot of bad intel, a lot of bad information, made a boneheaded decision that affected everyone else that was on the ground that day? We know there was a lot of mistakes made. Parents being corralled in the parking lot, I understand crowd control. I understand the need to keep the public back for their safety. But it seems to me that the focus was on crowd control more so than it was making entry into the building. Initially, as the first arriving officers got there, their first priority should have been chase that active shooter right into the building, right? That's what we all wanted to happen, and that's what should have happened. Hindsight. Instead, a number of them was doing crowd control. That whole part angers me. I understand the need. But certainly with that many officers arriving on scene that quickly, things should have been dealt with differently. How many children could have been saved? They're saying, if the reports are true, most of the shootings took place within the first couple of minutes, probably before, really anybody got there. I get that. How many bled out on the floor waiting for 48 minutes? We heard one report that said there was sporadic gunfire throughout that 48 minutes. So how many children lost their lives while up to 20 officers stood right outside the door waiting for a key? waiting for a ballistic shield that they didn't have. Defund the police. Certainly it sounds like that department needed more funding for training and funding for equipment, and maybe this would have been dealt with differently. I get it, small towns, there's not a lot of money to go around. I understand it. But I also understand there's a lot of waste, a lot of things that probably could have been managed and done differently to allow these officers to have the training that they needed, to have the equipment that they needed. But ballistic shield or not, when there's an active shooter behind a closed door of a classroom full of children, somebody goes through that door. You know, when you take on certain responsibilities in life, it's not just for a paycheck. And I know there's a lot of folks out there, they've taken their oath to protect and serve, and they do it wholeheartedly, day in and day out, putting their lives on the line. And you don't always know how people are going to react when they're actually faced with that kind of chaos. But I've met my fair share of folks that, one, should never have been allowed to join the military. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that shouldn't be on our police force, because they just don't have the aptitude, they don't have the training, they don't have the wisdom to make important decisions when it's needed. I can speak more so from the veteran side of things, because throughout my career I've watched people get promoted that should not have been promoted. I've watched people move into positions, leadership positions, that had no business being in leadership positions. And specifically in the Air Force, because I was in the Air Force, it's largely based on how well you can take a test and what your score is. Now, it's not just the test, it's a whole, and there's other factors involved as well, but it's on a point system, and you score enough points, you get another stripe, or you get that next promotion, or you get that next position. And some people test well, right? That doesn't mean they're smart. Doesn't mean they have any common sense. They don't have the wisdom to make good decisions. The same thing goes for our law enforcement, I'm sure. There's just folks out there that shouldn't be wearing the badge. I think as we get more and more facts, and as the facts change, we continue to learn about this, there is a lot to be learned from this scenario. It's just tragic. It's tragic. My heart goes out to the families. I pray it never happens to me or to my family and my loved ones. But you know, I live my life, try to walk with God, try to let Him guide my thoughts, my actions. And I just pray that if it ever becomes necessary, that He's there with me to guide my aim and my trigger pull. And that I do it when it's appropriate. You ready? Let's go for a walk. Come on, buddy. Come on, let's go. Shorty, let me help you down.